Hey, we are canceling the daily cancellation just for the day so that I could talk about something a bit more serious. Yesterday, we discussed the story of the leftist activist in Philadelphia who was murdered in his home after spending the previous several years aggressively downplaying the violent crime problem in his city. And he mocked those who pointed out that Philadelphia had become a crime-ridden wasteland, and then he himself ultimately fell victim to the problem that he denied. So it turns out that reality still exists and will assert itself even if you have your head firmly planted in the sand. And that was in Philadelphia. Now we have a story out of New York with some very similar themes. The Post-Millennial reports a stabbing took place early Monday morning in Brooklyn's Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood, claiming the life of poet and far-left activist Ryan Carson. The 32-year-old was walking down the sidewalk with his girlfriend when he was attacked by a stranger. A video emerged of the incident. It shows the couple sitting on a bench on the sidewalk when a man walks past them in a black hoodie. The man crosses the street, walks half a block down, then begins kicking over scooters in the street. The couple rise and walk in the same direction when the man turns around and approaches the couple. The couple continue walking toward him. The confrontation ensues, wherein Carson puts up his hands and seems to attempt to dispel the tension. The man gets closer to him and Carson pushes him off. Surveillance footage cuts to after the stabbing with Carson on the ground and his girlfriend standing by him. The attacker makes a motion toward her as well before moving off. According to the New York Post, the incident took place shortly before 4 a.m. on Monday. Just near a bus stop. Okay, so there is a video, as it says, of the incident. I'm not going to play the part where Carson is actually stabbed to death. No reason for anyone to watch that, but I want you to see everything that led up to this murder. Watch.
I'm so sorry. Are you please go watch him. Go watch him. I'm so Ryan. No, Ryan.
Now, this is obviously very sad to see. It's tragic anytime a deranged, violent, useless social parasite who's been left to roam the streets by our even more useless justice system randomly murders someone. It's obviously always a terrible thing. And also, we should acknowledge that Carson appears in that video to place himself between the crazy guy and his girlfriend, potentially saving her life in the process, and that takes real courage. So it's not for the sake of gloating, obviously, that we point out that Carson was not only a far-left activist, but according to reporting from Andy No, was a self-described Antifa member. And his girlfriend, No reports, had previously posted anti-cop sentiments, writing that the police do not protect you, along with ACAB and BLM. Now, these details are relevant not because we want to dunk over a dead body, but because there are very important lessons that must be learned in order to prevent this sort of thing from happening in the future. So let's review this. First of all, Ryan and his girlfriend are out walking the streets of Brooklyn at 4 a.m. Now, I don't know what they were doing out there or why they were out there. The Daily Mail claims that they were waiting for a bus, but in the video, you can see them getting up from the bench and walking away from it towards someplace else. But even if they were taking the bus, either way, you don't walk in the city at 4 a.m. and you don't take public transportation in the city at 4 a.m. Everything is more dangerous after dark in the city, and every person you encounter has a greater likelihood of doing you harm. That's not paranoia, it's just the reality. So mistake number one was being there in the first place. Second, he sees the lone black male in a hoodie walk by at 4 a.m., and he and his girlfriend immediately get up and walk the same direction. They don't even wait for a few minutes to let him pass and put some distance in between them. They decide to head his direction when they're 20 feet away from him. They don't cross the street, as they should have done. They don't turn and walk the other way, which also would have been a better choice. They walk right towards him, which was mistake number two. And third, when the guy goes crazy and starts knocking over scooters or whatever he was doing, Carson continues to walk towards the commotion. And when the crazy guy notices them and starts screaming at them, Carson tries to engage, telling him to chill, as if he had any chance of calming a knife-wielding psycho who's going berserk on a street corner in the middle of the night. And as soon as the crazy guy started yelling at Carson, saying, "What are you looking at?" and, et cetera, Carson still could have probably escaped with his life if he had simply turned and crossed the street and don't stop making eye contact, just go the other way, and gotten himself and his girlfriend out of the situation. But he didn't do that. Now, there's a whole list of common sense judgment calls that Carson could have made, but he didn't. And now, tragically, he's dead because of it. This is where his status as a far-left activist comes into play. Not for making fun of him, but for potentially understanding why he made this series of glaring, easily avoidable errors. Now, we cannot know for sure what was in his head at the time. But we do know that leftist ideology will not allow its adherents to make common sense judgment calls because those judgment calls are based on stereotypes. According to Carson's ideology, it would make him racist to cross the street and avoid that interaction. It would be judgmental, it would be marginalizing, it would be otherizing. Leftist ideology would rather that you be killed than you make those kinds of assumptions. Even if your assumptions are statistically justified, especially if they're statistically justified. Leftist ideology says it's better to die than that. And Ryan Carson did. Grand Canyon University is an affordable private Christian university that is located in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, and has a vibrant and expansive campus ranked top 20 in the country according to niche.com. Praised for its culture of community giving and impact, GCU integrates the free market system and a welcoming Christian worldview perspective into over 320 academic programs with more than 260 programs online as of March 2023. Earn your bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree where you can engage with faculty and connect with your own university counselor who takes a personalized approach for your success. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. That's gcu.edu. Now, this has become a major problem. As human beings, we should have an innate ability to calculate risk, recognize patterns, and assess potential hazards. And most of this should be automatic, almost unconscious. This basic level of situational awareness is what keeps you alive. But leftism has been working for years to interfere with that process, to kind of short circuit that hardwired programming that we all have, and to negate our ability to run these kinds of assessments. In fact, the whole mental process I just described in their religion, the religion of leftism is called unconscious bias and implicit bias. And it's something that they say we should actively reject. According to leftism, when our gut says that guy looks dangerous or don't walk that way or this seems kind of sketchy, we're being driven by the racism embedded deeply in our subconscious, and we should ignore it. The proper response, they say, is to ignore what our gut is telling us and charge ahead. And this is not a straw man. Like, go up to any DEI professional and ask them. Show them the first part of that video before we get to the stabbing and the guy going crazy. You got the two white people on the bench. Lone black male in a hoodie walks by 4 a.m. in the city. And ask one who works in DEI. Would it be okay for those two white people on the bench to look at that guy and say, I think I'm going to go I'm going to cross the street? They will all tell you no. No, if you do that, you're racist. No, you have to decenter your whiteness and dismantle white supremacy. Even if it means ending up bleeding to death on the sidewalk. Now, those of us whose minds have not been overtaken by the virus of leftism, we make these gut-level risk calculations all the time. And we should admit it. Because there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, not only is there nothing wrong with it, but it's the right thing to do. So just as one of hundreds of potential examples from my own life, and any reasonable person, we all have hundreds of examples. So here's just a recent one for me. Recently, I was out driving with my son at night, coming from somewhere to my house, and it wasn't very late, but it was dark, and we needed gas. So I pulled into a gas station. And before I stopped at a pump, I noticed a couple of guys hanging around off to the side. These were young black males, both in hoodies, not pumping gas, apparently not engaging in any kind of legitimate gas station-related business. Now, did I know for sure that they were dangerous? Of course not. They weren't visibly committing any crimes. They weren't doing anything that justified calling the police. They were just there. Now, maybe if I had pulled up to a pump and gotten out of my vehicle, they would have come over to me and talked to me about the gospel of Jesus Christ. Maybe they were out there fundraising for the Knights of Columbus. It's possible. Anything is possible. But the situation didn't feel right to me. I got a bad vibe. I didn't like the way it all looked. I had my son in the car with me. I'm not taking any chances, so I left. And the whole process of risk calculation took about 10 seconds. You pull in, didn't even stop the car. Pulled in and say, I don't like the look of this. I'll go somewhere else. Now, did I make stereotypical assumptions? Hell yes, I did. What else was I going to do? You can only work with the information you have immediately available. Was the assumption based entirely on race? No, obviously not. If I'd pulled in and seen a middle-aged black woman at a pump putting gas in her Camry or whatever, I wouldn't have been concerned. So my calculation was taking everything into account. Everything about the situation, the people, everything. Many different factors, including how they were dressed, what they're doing, the context, or in this case, not doing, as they were not pumping gas. But if I was a leftist, the point is, then the fact that they were black males would have prevented me from running that risk calculation at all. I would have felt guilty for making assumptions based on stereotypes, however grounded in reality those stereotypes might be. I would have stopped the car, I would have gotten out, and maybe everything would have been fine. Or maybe I would have gotten carjacked with my child in the back seat. These are the risks that leftism would have you make. Now, late last month, a white female tech CEO in Baltimore named Pava LaPere was brutally beaten and murdered inside her apartment complex, allegedly by someone named Jason Dean Billingsley. And Jason Dean Billingsley is a black man with an extensive rap sheet that includes assault and rape. And yet he was still out on the streets, of course. But how did Billingsley get into the apartment complex? Well, the doors are secure and only residents can get inside. Well, according to investigators, LaPere opened the door for Billingsley and let him into the building. He said that he forgot his key, and she believed him, or pretended to. And then after letting him in, she got into an elevator with this ominous-looking guy with neck tattoos. There's a guy with neck tattoos trying to get into what we assume is a higher-income apartment complex, because you got a CEO living there. And she sees this guy and says, oh yeah, he looks like he lives here, even though clearly he doesn't. A short time later, she was dead on the roof. Her body wasn't discovered for several days. Now, we don't know LaPere's politics, but as a white female tech CEO in Baltimore, we can probably assume that she wasn't exactly the sort of person who would walk around in a MAGA hat. And so, we can also safely assume that a certain amount of white guilt led her to open the door for this guy with neck tattoos who didn't have a key for the building, and then get in an elevator with him. She didn't want to stereotype. So instead, she died. Another tragedy. And what makes it all the more tragic is that it is all so easily avoidable. All of it can be avoided. But first, you have to free your mind from leftism. Thanks for checking out this video. If you'd like to listen to my full podcast on the go, you can check out The Matt Walsh Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.